Our first speaker is John Seago. He is with Texas Right to Life, and he's going to talk to us about pro-life legislation. John.
Great. Thank you. My name is John Seago. I serve as the Legislative Director for Texas Right to Life. We are the largest and oldest pro-life organization in Texas. We are one of the main opponents of former Speaker Strauss. And you can't say that about all the pro-life organizations. So one thing that we get to do is we get to set priorities. There will be 30 to 50 pro-life bills filed during this session. And one of the things we get to do in the Capitol is say, what are the most important bills to work on? And so we kind of define what is going to actually save lives. There are a lot of pro-life bills that are filed and that are even heralded by our governor or our lieutenant governor that won't actually save lives. And so that's one of the ways that we help your legislators. We have pro-life legislators, pro-life heroes, who we get to help them and help them determine what should be bill number 1, bill number 2, 3, and 4. So in your seats, we have a list of the legislative priorities for this upcoming session. There are 4 legislative priorities here. And we're lucky if we get out of a legislative session with 2 significant pro-life bills. You would think with even whatever we had, more than 95 Republicans, it would be easy for them to sail through. And that wasn't the case, and that's definitely not going to be the case this session. We have 86 pro-life votes in the House because we lose one Republican and we gain 4 pro-life Democrats. So with that 86, though, it is still a time for us to make it very clear that Texas is pro-life. That we believe that we need to protect and we need to promote innocent human life from fertilization until natural death. And so that's what we're doing with the bills that you're looking at on your page. That's what these bills are for. They deal with elective abortion, they deal with conscience protections, and they deal with protecting vulnerable patients. I want to talk a little bit about number 1. Number 1 is PRENDA. It is the Preborn Non-Discrimination Act. This bill is our top abortion-related priority. And this is a dynamic bill, and it highlights a couple of things. One, it takes the rhetoric from the left, that they're against discrimination, that they're against hate speech, they're against not valuing all human beings equally, right? That's what they say, that's their rhetoric. But when it comes to elective abortion, nothing could be further from the truth. They are discriminatory. Actually, the whole act of elective abortion is discriminatory because the child can't speak for themselves. They're younger, they're more innocent, they're more vulnerable. But there are some abortions that are even more discriminatory when the abortion is motivated by the sex of the child, when it's motivated by the ethnicity of the child, or even a suspected disability. And unfortunately, the Republican Party has let down the pro-life movement on this point, on this discriminatory against those children who have disabilities. What our modern Republican leadership has done is they have said, we're not going to apply all our pro-life protections to children with disabilities in the womb. That's actually the opposite of what we do in public policy generally. Usually we say if you have a disability, if you have a handicap, we give you more protection, more access, more attention. But what happens in abortion is we say we're going to stop all elective abortions after 20 weeks unless we expect you to have a disability. Then you can be aborted all the way up into the day before you were supposed to be born. That's ridiculous. That's the opposite of what we say in other areas. That is absolutely discriminatory because these children are expected not to be perfect. That's what number 1 is about. It closes that loophole, and it also bans discriminatory abortions, abortions that have this discriminatory element to them. And it also doesn't just say no to the abortion. We always get accused of we only care about the child when they're in the womb. This bill doesn't just say no to the abortion, it wants to help families access social and medical services that are life-affirming. And so this is PRENDA, the Preborn Non-Discrimination Act. It's going to be number 1. And this is important because it takes the rhetoric from the left, but it also holds our own accountable. We actually have this problem because of moderate Republicans. And the problem is they say, oh, I'm against abortion except in the hard cases. But that kind of logic is actually the logic of the pro-abortion movement, is that they only want to protect some lives. Unless that life is inconvenient, then yeah, have the abortion, continue your education. right? So they're devaluing preborn life based on this discrimination, and that's exactly what these moderate Republicans are doing whenever they say, I'm against abortion unless the child has a disability. So that's what we're working on. We have, like I said, we have 86 votes, and so we're going to have to hold our own accountable to this. We're going to have to work on Republicans. There's about 20 Republicans that will be in Austin, and we're not sure how they're going to vote on this issue. So it's really important that Republicans know that that person who just a few months ago knocked on your door and said they were the biggest and baddest pro-life representative you ever met, we're going to hold them accountable, and we're going to let you know how they voted on this. So that's number one, is the Preborn Non-Discrimination Act. That was led by Senator Hancock and by Representative Matt Schaefer last year. They're kind of positioned to lead on that issue again. But again, we're going to have everybody's help on this, because we're going to have to, in whatever happens with our speakers race and with our committees, we're going to have pro-life Texans reminding the new leadership, the new chair of state affairs, the new Speaker of the House, that life is a priority. When we say we believe in life, liberty, and property, that order is actually logical. It actually makes sense, is that if you want your liberty protected, if you want your property protected, you have to have elected officials who are going to stand up for life. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that, even amongst the Republican Party in the last few sessions. The number two has to do with medical ethics. That's what I talked about, is we take this issue of abortion, the reasons that we're against elective abortion, that it's an injustice, it's an attack on innocent human life. Those same principles that draw us to oppose abortion, we apply those towards patients, vulnerable patients. And especially here in Dallas-Fort Worth, abortion is not the only attack on innocent human life. We have hospitals, we have hospital committees that are enabled by Texas law to distribute their anti-life ethics, to say this patient isn't as valuable, we're going to take the ventilator off this patient. This patient isn't as valuable, so we're going to take their dialysis away against their will. Texas law allows these hospitals to do this. Just in the last few months, we have had 10 cases here in Dallas-Fort Worth area. 10 cases where a family is saying to the hospital, we want to continue a ventilator. Ventilator is life-sustaining treatment. It's basic. It's air. It's not even treatment. It's what you need to stay alive. They say, we want this ventilator, and in 10 cases, 10 different families, the hospital said, no, we don't think that's the right decision for you, for your family. We know you wrote it down in your advance directive. We know that your wife, the wife of the patient, is there saying keep the ventilator on, but no, you don't get to make that decision. Texas law allows that. That's what number two is about. So we want to make sure that we're being consistent, that we're going to protect all innocent human life. And that issue actually isn't Republican versus Democrat. That issue, we have some of our Democrats are leading on trying to protect patients in that. And so wanted to bring your attention to that one. And then number three, you all know number three well. We still are sending taxpayer dollars to the abortion industry. We are sending state and local taxpayer dollars to the abortion industry. And we need to put these prohibitions into law to actually stop that. Now, the most recent example is the Austin City Council. Now, I have to serve as a missionary in Austin. I'm glad you don't. I have been called by the Lord to go live in Austin, Texas. And what my city council did, my own city council did, is they passed a lease saying, we're going to let Planned Parenthood rent a city-owned building, a historical building in the center of East Austin, a low-income and minority neighborhood. We're going to let them lease this building for $1 a year. And the contract, it's just a small contract, it's just for 20 years. And they just have an option to extend it 20 more years. So we're talking about for the next 40 years, my city council thought it was a good idea to give Planned Parenthood, the #1 abortion provider in our country, to give them $1 a year rent. Now, you don't have to know a whole lot about Austin, but we have a budget problem. We need that money. Even if you're going to let Planned Parenthood rent the building, which you shouldn't in the first place, at least charge them market value, right? At least charge them half off. Okay? But that's the kind of thing that local governments are doing. So this bill says we're not going to allow cities and counties to give these sweetheart deals to the abortion industry, an industry that is built around taking innocent human life. So those are some of them. We're also going to protect the conscience of medical professionals. That's number 4. Really need your help this session. We're going to have to hold all of our Republicans accountable to this. So one way that you can do that is to sign up for our text alerts at the bottom of the page. You can text that number. And get our call to actions. We have some call to actions coming up very soon to remind our new elected officials that life is a priority. And this has to be number 1 on their list when they get to Austin. Thank you all for your time. Have a great evening.
Okay, and next we have Bill Ames, and he is going to talk to us about the education situation and how liberal ideas are rampant in the college campuses, and they're now trickling down to K-12, and hopefully some suggestions on what we can do about it. Bill Ames.
We've got 10 minutes here, so fasten your seatbelts. We're going to go fast. What's the greatest threat to America today? Is it terrorism? Is it open borders? Is it healthcare costs? Crime and violence? Opioid addiction? Climate change? Wealth inequity? Consider for a moment that in Americans' colleges and universities, liberal professors outnumber conservatives 11.5 to 1. In the history departments in colleges, the ratio is 33.5 to 1. My conclusion to that is that colleges and universities are lost to liberal bias. There's a concern, however, and there is evidence that in Texas, this political bias is flowing down into K-12 public schools. I intend to make a case tonight that a significant emerging threat to Texas's and America's conservative values is K-12 public education. What is evidence? Today's millennials are the first demographic in United States history to prefer socialism to capitalism. The Gallup poll has conducted surveys between 2010 and 2018. In 2018, the first time in U.S. history, any demographic has preferred socialism to capitalism. Over half of millennials, the 18 to 29-year-old group, have a positive view of socialism. And going with that, there's a significant decrease from 2010 to 2018 of millennials that have a positive view of capitalism. 68% in 2010, down to 45% in 2018. This is in marked contrast to older groups, the parents of these millennials, in which views of capitalism and socialism have remained relatively constant. Key conclusion for that is that the millennials are not getting this stuff at home. Further evidence of millennial voting patterns during the 2018 midterms. Overall, millennials voted for Democrats by a 30% margin over Republicans. That's up from only 7% Democrat in the 2006 midterms, which was the last time that Democrats won the House. The responses to the survey vary by race and gender. For example, in the question of do you want to impeach the president, minority women, 85% of them wanted to impeach the president. Minority men, 76%. White women, 69%. White men, 28%. More evidence. The survey by Gallup, are you extremely proud to be an American? In 2014, 57% of citizens were proud, extremely proud to be Americans. 4 years later, it's 47%. That's the lowest in the 18-year history of the Gallup poll. By the way, only 32% of Democrats in 2018 are extremely proud to be Americans. Where is this leftist ideology mindset originating? Texas public schools graduate over 300,000 students into Texas society each year. My conclusion, public education is the primary contributor to the Texas millennials' ideology. Public education's ideological agenda originates with the teachers' unions nationally. The American Federation of Teachers had a 2018 convention in Pennsylvania. They had 3 keynote speakers. You know who they are? Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Elizabeth Warren. During the convention, the delegates, who were teachers, adopted a whole number of sample resolutions. Some of them: universal health care, free college tuition, free child care, restore the Obamacare mandate, DACA citizenship, oppose ICE, oppose Bruce Kavanaugh, and censor the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group list. All socialist resolutions. Teachers' unions have a significant impact. Their membership. Texas membership of the American Federation of Teachers is 40,000. The larger National Education Association membership in Texas is over 56,000. So we have almost 100,000 teachers' union members who potentially carry the socialist message of their union to our kids. That teachers' union ideology flows down to the state education organizations, school districts, and schools. Here's an example of some of the bias. This is a ABC primer for kids, and Amazon.com and their ratings say, A is for Activist is an ABC board book written and illustrated for next generation of progressives. A is for Activist. C is for creative counter to corporate vultures. O is for Occupy. P is for protest. T is for transgender. You get the picture. I have a lot of examples I don't have time for tonight, but this is happening in my backyard, Richardson ISD. Here's a conversation that I had with an advanced placement government teacher, which is the last chance for a kid to learn civics in high school. Teacher, getting my students to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance respectfully is more an exercise in obedience than in patriotism. Bill says, the Texas Education Code, ma'am, mandates you to teach patriotism and free market capitalism. Teacher, students are able to accomplish that mandate while adhering to any of various ideologies. There are many types of American patriotism. Conservatives and liberals can be equally patriotic. Doesn't that sound like Beto O'Rourke saying that the greatest thing that a patriot can do is take a knee for the national anthem? Yeah. The same Richardson ISD social studies teacher teaches that democratic socialism is a good thing, but democratic socialists in the long run want to end capitalism. This was happening in your backyard. Fort Worth ISD, Northside High School. A Fort Worth school board trustee and a Democrat state representative presented critical race theory to the Northside High School student body. What is critical race theory? It's a message that institutional racism is pervasive in American culture. Dr. Duke Pestick, how many have seen his presentation? A few. He's a college professor and a nationally known speaker. He has given cultural literacy tests to over 1,800 college freshmen. The response, 75% define capitalism as greedy, selfish, and unfair. 85% said socialism was fair and equal. The public education establishment agenda is to make the United States and Texas socialist without firing a shot. How can this socialist takeover of publication be stopped? Enter David Horowitz Freedom Center in California. Outside I have 100 copies of a brochure called Leftist Indoctrination in Our K-12 Public Schools. The first half of the book talks about egregious things that are going on in public schools around the country which show a political leftist bias. I invite you to pick up a copy after, but I'd ask you to commit, read it, and to call your senator or your state rep and say, we want to stop political bias in the K through 12 classrooms in Texas. The second half of the presentation is a, here I've got, hang on a second. I went past the slide that I'd like to back up to. Okay, got it. Anyway, second half of the book talks about a legislation which will prevent political bias to be taught in the classroom. And unlike previous attempts to create legislation for a more patriotic curriculum, this one would provide consequences for teachers that are reported who break that. This is simply some of the text of the proposed legislation. I won't go through this. Finally, these are additional requirements for the education agenda, some of which are on Brad's program here. Provide education savings account options for Texas families. Reform school property taxes and funding. Prevent taxpayer funding of education lobbying organizations like teachers' unions, TASA and TASB, along with the municipal constraints that other folks are interested in. And finally, to require school board and school bond elections to be moved to the election cycle. We will be at the table with a whole bunch of these brochures after the meeting. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening to the education agenda.
Next, we are going to hear from Texans for Vaccine Choice, Jackie Schlegel and Rebecca Hardy, and these are two ladies that have earned my admiration and respect over the last 2 years for their courage in stepping out and doing what they do under some really tough circumstances, and they've been brilliant at the way that they do that, and so please welcome Jackie and Rebecca.
Oh my goodness, does anybody have a milk carton I can stand on? Okay, are we good? We're good? Okay, yeah, no, we're good. Oh, very good, thank you. Okay, I better get started. Good evening. I'm so excited to be here, but a little nervous. After Julie extended this invitation and this offer to us, she quickly followed with, you have 10 minutes. And I was like, 10 minutes? I can't get my name out in 10 minutes, much give you the extent of Texans for Vaccine Choice. Now add this little countdown clock, and let me tell you, I'm really anxious about this. So I resorted to something that I've never done before, which is written notes. But we really do have a lot of content that we want to give to you in a short time period, so you're gonna have to bear with us as we try to get to all of this. It is my hope that in this next 10 minutes, we can answer your most pressing questions, that we can clear up any misconceptions, and most importantly, we can stir your heart and lead you to action. It is my sincere hope that by the end of tonight, you will be lined up asking, what can I do? So now that I have precisely 9 minutes left, let's dive right in. All right, my name is Jackie Schlegel. I'm the Executive Director of Texans for Vaccine Choice, which still gets me really excited just to say that I have like this official title, because the truth is, like many of you, I'm just a mom. My story is a little unique because prior to Texans for Vaccine Choice, I was not only apolitical at best, I was actually quite progressive in my thinking. But I had a story, and that story began as a mother. Shortly after the arrival of my first child in 2001, she had a severe reaction to her 4-month-old vaccines that left her permanently disabled with a brain injury amongst 48 other diagnoses. It opened my eyes to vaccine injury and vaccine safety. So when in 2015 legislation was proposed to take away my right to vaccine choice to my 2 other children, they're actually there in the back, and take away this for them to attend public school, this was my aha moment. This was my moment that woke me up and got me engaged in Texas politics. Most of you know the story. This legislation put a fire in my soul. I started Texans for Vaccine Choice, and in 2015 we defeated 17 bills that were all aimed at removing your right to informed consent, medical privacy, and vaccine choice, which is what our mission statement has morphed into today. So the first question that we get often is, are you anti-vaccine? Are we anti-vaccine?
Yes.
How many people are like, yeah, I am anti-vaccine? But absolutely not. As an organization, we are not anti-vaccine. We believe in this concept that you are smart enough to make medical decisions for yourself. I know, it's kind of groundbreaking, right? You're smart enough to make this decision for yourself. And I know for many of us that, you know, it's kind of laughable, we kind of joke, but you would be surprised at how many liberty-loving activists are stumped on this issue of vaccine choice. We agree with you, they say, but what about polio? That seems to be the one, right? What about polio? So interesting, in our 4 years of doing Texans for Vaccine Choice, never have we once dealt with a bill on polio. Have we ever dealt with a bill on polio? No, not once in 4 years. Okay, so even though we are primarily parental rights, you can't have a discussion on vaccines without talking about the science. So even though that's not our primary focus, I want to dive into 4 points for you right now about the science, all right? Number one, I'm going to start with, and these actually have 2 flyers in your seat. The first one is this, right here, okay? Vaccines that come from aborted fetal cells. Many people are completely and entirely unaware that pharmaceutical companies and vaccine production is one of the biggest enablers for the abortion industry. And that tie goes far beyond vaccine production. For the sake of time, I'm not going to dive into all of this. I'd be preaching to the choir. But I'm going to allow you to draw your own conclusions on how you feel about this, because I can tell you how I feel about this, and I'm not okay with this. Number 2, this flyer right here, 73 doses, never tested in combination for safety. Let that sink in. This schedule has never been tested, and yet this is what is mandated for your children to go to school. And if you think this is just about children, you are wrong. The adult schedule has been released, and you are next, okay? 1986, a federal law passed that provides full immunity from liability to vaccine manufacturers. When you accept a vaccine, you accept responsibility if you are injured by that vaccine. Imagine absolutely zero accountability for the pharmaceutical industry. Again, this is horrifying. You need to be making these decisions. Lastly, there are over 300 vaccines in the making today. Even if you love this schedule, even if you love your vaccines, when you hand over your right to choose what's best for you and your family, you sign up for 300 of the vaccines that are in the making today. That's why you should care about this issue. So let me ask you a question. What area of your life do you believe the government is better equipped to manage than you are? Is there anything? No. Okay? So why would vaccines be any different? Right? It should not be. So while there are many questions about vaccine safety, the conflicts of interest, and legitimate and valid concerns, our ultimate goal as a political action committee is to keep California politics and policy out of our great state. Who is with me? Right? But Texas is free. Texas is free. We support vaccine choice. While I do not have time to go through all the material that is going to be handed out to you right now, I do want to, where are my people? Handout material.
Oh, they already have it. Amazing.
Jeez, I missed that one.
I did too.
I don't have time to go through all of this. I want to point out this handy flyer here tells you why this issue should be of highest importance to you. We are an organization that tackles this from the standpoint of vaccines, but the truth is we are all well aware this issue is far bigger, far greater, and the ultimate goal of the Liberty Grabbers is not just vaccines, but all areas of our life. This is the path that California took. As you can see, Texas has had similar attempts, and we're up for an uphill battle, and here to tell you about that is our amazing Director of State Policy, Rebecca Hardy.
All right, thank you. All right. So in 2000, I'm just going to give you a little bit of history here. In 2003, this was a big year for vaccine choice in Texas. This was before we were around, but this is the year that the expansions for exemptions were passed. Since 2003, not a single proactive bill has been filed or passed in our state legislature, and there is so much ground that we have got to take back when it comes to our rights. Fast forward to 2015, this was the infamous year that we had a mandate bill that spurred all of our little group of moms that is now a humongous group to action, and 16, maybe 17 bills were filed against us. We defeated all of them, but and these are bills like tracking your the state saying removing your consent to have the government track your vaccinations, mandates for school teachers, mandates for school enrollment, Gardasil, all these things that are stepping stone bills to bigger things. We defeated all of them, but we were 100% on the defense. 2017 we had a really great session. We went into the session with the goal of defeat all of the bad bills, get several bills filed, and get one hearing on the books. And we did it. All of the bad bills were defeated. We had 6 proactive, pro-parent, pro-individualized medicine bills filed. And we did have one hearing on one of our bills. It was really great. And we had 2 amendments on 2 CPS bills added, and both of those bills went on to be signed by Governor Abbott. And then for our priorities that are coming along for 2019, we've had some issues with shot clinics being taken place on school campuses and children being improperly vaccinated, making exemptions a little bit more easy to attain, and Medicaid doctors that are refusing to see patients if they're not completely compliant with the schedule. So anyway, we've got lots of lawsuits in the works and ground to take back. Jackie.
Okay, we got 30 seconds here. It's probably going to take me a minute, so I'm going to try to get through this. As you can see, this is a very big issue. It's an issue far greater, far more complex, complicated than the media portrays in their completely unbiased reporting of our issue. And indeed, more than we can fully elaborate on in just 10 minutes. But here's what I want to leave with you. Beyond what you have heard here tonight, okay, Texans for Vaccine Choice has a very unique opportunity to serve a very marginalized population. Every single day, my phone personally blows up with phone calls from vaccine-injured families whose lives have been devastated, emotionally, financially, structurally. Every single day, we lead, we guide, we mentor, we pray for our young moms who are without a political home, or worse, who have bought into the progressive ideology that is our worst enemy in this great state, honestly. When you invest in Texans for Vaccine Choice, you are investing into new voters, new supporters, new advocates that we as a movement desperately need. And not only do we need them, they need us. Friends, if we have moved you to action tonight, if you feel so compelled, I would ask you to join this fight. First, by becoming a member, and if you feel so led to contribute your time, your resources, one of these volunteers would love to assist you in getting plugged in. And I will just close with this. We at Texans for Vaccine Choice do not take lightly the support that this movement has given us. It has been an absolute joy, an honor, and we consider it a huge responsibility to stand amongst all these incredible organizations, and more importantly, you, the grassroots. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to serve with you and alongside you.
all excited yet? You know, January 8th is only a few weeks away, really. We got holidays in between there, so you have to get ready. Next we're going to hear from Tom Giovanetti. I know you're here somewhere, Tom. Oh, there you are. Okay. Tom is going to talk to us about civil asset forfeiture, which is something I just learned about a few years ago at a town hall that my state representative held. And I went, what? I could not believe that the authorities are allowed to do what they do, and we need to fight this. So please welcome Tom.
Thank you. This will work fine. Thank you very much. My name is Tom Giovanetti. I'm the president of a conservative think tank in Irving called the Institute for Policy Innovation, and I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. I am told you guys are all about the Constitution. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have to explain to you guys that the Constitution was written to protect individual liberty and to limit the government, right? It wasn't written to limit us. It was written to limit them. Okay? That's where you guys are, right? Okay. Well, let's find out. Okay? Because I want to talk to you about an issue that confuses people and that actually splits a lot of right-thinking people, and that's civil asset forfeiture. Under civil asset forfeiture, law enforcement is permitted today, as we sit here, to seize property from people who are accused of a crime. Now, I didn't say convicted of crime. I didn't say charged with a crime. I said accused of a crime. Now, if you know anything about the First Amendment protections, if you know anything about Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search and seizure, okay, I didn't just make that phrase up, right? That's in the Constitution. Law enforcement is not allowed to come in your house and look around without a warrant. But they're allowed to take your house without a warrant under civil asset forfeiture. Law enforcement is not allowed to stop your vehicle and look in the trunk without a warrant. But they can seize your car and take it without a warrant under civil asset forfeiture. Now, when I tell people about this, your reaction is very common. There's two main reactions. I'm not making this up. Okay, this is literally, and Texas is one of the worst states in the union on civil asset forfeiture. There's two reactions that we get when we talk to people about civil asset forfeiture. The first reaction is, you cannot possibly be correct. I'm sorry, Tom, you're mistaken. There is zero chance that that goes on today in Texas. Well, I'm not incorrect. And I don't have time to persuade you of the facts tonight. Just go online and do some research, and your jaw will drop. So the most common reaction is that this cannot possibly be going on in America. It does. It goes on all the time. The second reaction I get is the most interesting reaction, which is, well, Tom, don't you back the blue? Because you know who is in favor of civil asset forfeiture? Law enforcement, police departments, sheriff's departments, AGs, county attorneys, county judges. Okay? They're all in favor of it. Police unions are all in favor of it. And so when we talk about trying to reform civil asset forfeiture, people say, you're trying to take a weapon away from us. All we're trying to do is stop the drug dealers. And in fact, drug dealers is where this came from in the first place. Because the idea was, so a drug dealer goes out and makes millions of dollars, and they buy homes and boats, and they have big bank accounts, and cars and trucks, and we arrest them and we put them in jail for 10 years, and then they get out, and they're still rich. What's the justice in that? Why should they be allowed to keep the proceeds of their crime? Well, of course, they shouldn't be allowed to keep the proceeds of their crime. So we started to attack the property of criminals, not just the criminals themselves. But as government usually does, government screwed it up, okay? And they didn't put enough protections around it. And so what happens when you give government a power and don't put the four walls of the Constitution around that power, government takes it and runs with it to excess. And so today, we're not just taking Bentleys away from drug dealers. We're taking pickup trucks away from union steel workers. We're taking bass boats away from truck drivers because they were pulled over for having a taillight out. And I'm not making that up. There was a family in Pennsylvania who had their home seized, their home seized because their teenage son was selling marijuana at high school. So law enforcement said, well, the kid's got nothing, but the parents have a house, and they took it. And it took that family 7 years to get their house back under civil asset forfeiture. Now folks, I back the blue, okay? I back a lot of things, but I back the Constitution first. And you have to stay within the four walls of the Constitution. And when the President is within the Constitution, I support him. When the law enforcement is within the Constitution, I support them. When Congress is within the Constitution, I support them. But when they step outside the four walls of the Constitution, we no longer support that. Okay? And so the answer to, Tom, what's the matter? Why don't you back the blue? The answer is, I back the Constitution. And what you're doing right now is unconstitutional. It's wrong. It's abusive, and it is a grotesque violation of individual liberty. Again, as I said earlier, they can't look in your trunk without a warrant, but they can take the whole car without a warrant. But this goes on all the time, and it goes on in Texas. In the last legislative session, there were scores of bills introduced in Texas to do something about this. Not one of them got out of committee. Not one. The tragedy on the topic of civil asset forfeiture is that we lost our champion last week. Connie Burton was the champion in Texas of reforming civil asset forfeiture. And Connie Burton was that rare Republican who actually understands what I was talking about a bit ago, about it is the Constitution that is foremost. Okay? Backing the blue is not some binary thing where you have to back every single thing that they do, or you're somehow a communist or something. No. We expect all of government to stay within the four walls of the Constitution. And we have got to put law enforcement back within the four walls of the Constitution. But this is a hard lift for Republicans, right? Because Republicans are supposed to be, law and order people, right? We're supposed to back the blue. We're supposed to be law and order people. And so Republicans in Austin, with a few exceptions, have been spineless on this topic because they're terrified of the police officers union or whoever running someone against them in the primary. Okay? I spoke on this topic in the spring of this year at the Texas Public Policy Foundation down in Austin. Connie Burton was on the panel with me. And in the back of the room, sitting in the back row, there was this row of about 8 people. Okay? And somebody whispered in my ear, that's the entire district attorney's office from Travis County that have all come out here just to see what you guys are saying. Because here's what happens. Seizure of personal property has become a revenue raiser for law enforcement. And I ask you, what is worse? A red light camera for revenue or taking people's cash, cars, trucks, boats, and houses? Which is worse? We get all worked up about red light cameras. Okay? What I'm talking to you about tonight is so much worse than red light cameras, but we can get bills through the committees on red light cameras. We can't get anything done on civil asset forfeiture. If you believe in individual liberty, if you believe in rule of law, and if you believe in the Constitution, you have got to be opposed to what's going on in Texas right now on civil asset forfeiture. I'm going to tell you a little secret too. It tends to be enforced in a very discriminatory way. It tends to be poor people and minorities who get hammered by civil asset forfeiture. A guy working a blue-collar job, he gets paid on Friday, he cashes his check, he goes by the store, buys a six-pack on the way home. The cop knows that he's got his paycheck in his pocket. Those people get pulled over. Sir, looks like you got a taillight out. We can take care of this right now. And I'm telling you folks, that kind of stuff goes on all the time. It goes on all the time. You cannot claim as a conservative and as a constitutionalist that you care about the poor and the minorities if you let this continue to go on. But we've got a terrible problem. We lost our champion. But you know what? Maybe the fact that we had one champion on this is why we haven't succeeded. We need every single member of the legislature who claims to believe in the Constitution and who claims to believe in individual liberty to get behind this in the next session. Texas is among the worst states in the union on civil asset forfeiture, and that ought not be. Not in the state where we support the Constitution, not in the state where we pride ourselves on individual liberty, not in the state where we understand that the Constitution is designed to put government in a box, not individual people. This ought not be in Texas. So I urge you to pound on your elected representatives. Make them understand this. Explain to them why, yes, you're doing the right thing even if the police don't like it. It doesn't mean you don't back law enforcement. It means you've got your priorities in order and you back the Constitution. Okay? If you want to know more about this, you can go to our website at ipi.org. You can go to a wonderful website called Right on Crime, which is a Texas-specific criminal justice reform group that does a lot of work on this. And I've got a pocket full of business cards if anybody wants to connect with me afterward. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Tom.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
It's the all-important thank you note.
Well, I appreciate that.
We appreciate you. Thanks. Okay, next we were supposed to have Aaron Harris with Texas, I'm in Direct Action, Texas, to talk to us about election integrity. But Aaron had to travel tonight, so he's unable to be here. But please, if you haven't already, like DAT on Facebook or go to their webpage, because it's a very, very important issue, and they're kind of the leader in this area on election integrity issues. So keep up with it on the web that way. And of course, it's one of our legislative priorities, so we'll be letting you know about that too, if you signed up for my information on my list. So instead of Aaron Harris, we have the wonderful Jonathan Stickland to talk to us about the speaker's race, and an important development happened today in that front. So please welcome Representative Jonathan.
Good evening. Y'all don't worry about calling, lobbying me. I'm supportive of everything I've heard so far tonight, okay? I got the record to prove it. Well, the speaker update has changed. I keep checking my phone because it seems to be changing by the hour. And where we are right now is it looks like Representative Dennis Bonnen from Angleton will serve as the next Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives. For those of you that do not know, me and Representative Bonnen have definitely had our clashes over the years. If you've ever seen our highlight reels, he's usually on the other side of almost every single one of those. But here's the truth. Dennis has always been a little bit of his own man. I want to be fair in what I am saying here tonight. Dennis has at times stuck up for the conservative movement, and other times he has let us down. I will tell you that there are a lot of folks that I have a lot of respect for in the Texas House who have signed on in support of Dennis Bonnen. And today he rolled out at a press conference 109 names who have signed on with him as a Speaker of the Texas House. Me and Dennis have had words over the years. I will tell you that 4 days ago, he called me personally on the phone and said he wanted to talk about his race and his vision for the state of Texas. And I have to be honest with you, I was very hopeful based on that conversation. He was saying things that I could definitely be on board with. One of which was the most important to me was getting rid of the current power structure in Austin. And that includes one of the men who have been behind Joe Strauss, his consultant by the name of Gordon Johnson. He talked about things like cleaning out the parliamentarian's office, which would be a huge victory for conservatives if that was to happen. And he talked about letting it be a member-driven body. While I have not personally signed on with Dennis Bonnen, like the majority of the Republicans, I am going to be meeting with him, hopefully in the next week. He reached out tonight after I said congratulations and said he would like to get together. So hopefully I'll have a lot more to report to you then. But we need to be in prayer, okay? One of the good things that has happened through this whole process is, even though it happened differently than the December 1st meeting, I have been told that they do intend to actually have the December 1st meeting to have the Republican caucus come together and make this official. That is a huge precedent for us to set in the state of Texas, and something that we need to make sure happens. The other part of this is that I have stood up publicly before all of you and said, the winner of that caucus will get my vote on the Texas House floor. I maintain that today. So that is a whole new territory. Now, you have seen Dennis Bonnen come out with his list of 109 names. I really respect the fact that he went to Republicans first to get the support. He has since gotten Democrats who have come on after the fact. And what he talked about, which was interesting in his press conference, there were two things that I just loved about his press conference. Number one, he told Scott Braddock, who was in the Quorum Report, which is one of the biggest liberal rags in Austin, okay? These guys make CNN look halfway reasonable. He asked him a question, and Dennis immediately went on the offensive against him and called him out for some lies. That is something that has never happened in Austin, and it shocked me. He took two questions, and one of them was pounding back at a liberal reporter. So that was good. The other thing that Dennis said was that while he had 109 names, he was interested in earning the support and the respect of all 150 people. And one of the things that we've been fighting for as a conservative movement, at least from my perspective, is this. I'm not looking for someone to tell me what is conservative and what is not from the speaker's dice. I'm looking for an opportunity to bring my own agenda, represent my district, and make that case, and not have a speaker who is going to impede my ability to do so. Let the process work. Enforce the rules fairly, and allow us to have votes on the legislation. And that's exactly what he has said so far as a presumptive speaker-elect. So, how much time do we have there? I want to answer any questions that you guys may have about this process, and please understand, this press conference was at 3 o'clock today, so there's a lot that we do not know yet. Yes, sir.
I'm not familiar with him, but where does he depart from the Republican Party of Texas platform?
We don't quite know that yet. I will tell you that Rice University ranked Representative Bonnen as the 24th most conservative member of the Texas House, which compared to Joe Strauss is an incredible improvement. Any more questions? Yes?
Any question about how he will pick chairs, the process he will use to pick chairs of committees?
We have not heard anything on the process, although I will tell you in my private conversations I've been very impressed with what he says he's going to do with the chairs. And at this point I have to believe that he wants to follow through. Yes?
You mentioned his ranking on the Rice University study. When he was chair over the committee that gutted Senate Bill 2 last session, was that under pressure from anybody else, or was, because you said he's his own man, he thinks for himself, so was that him doing that? And if so, how does that jive with his ranking as a conservative?
So certainly once you get past the initial Freedom Caucus members on any ranking system, there's a significant drop-off in the conservative-ness. So with that being said, you know, I think the person who does something should be held responsible regardless of what pressure they may or may not have put on. So I have to put the blame there. Now, I will tell you that I have had private conversations with Representative Bonnen too. He takes property taxes seriously. And what I have said all along is that we need to get property tax reform, but the end result has to be property tax elimination. And that is one of the points that he conceded in talking about SB 2 last time. Now, I don't think that's an excuse, but I have some serious concerns about that going forward, Joe. But I think we all have to be responsible for what happened on our club. Yes?
Did he say anything about term limits for the speaker? And did he say anything about transparency in the calendars committee and tagging?
We specifically have talked about the calendars committee. What Bonnen has told all of us is that he wants that to be member-driven, which scares me on one sense, but I also respect it. So rather than coming through with an iron fist, it sounds like he's open to getting our input and allowing us to actually have a vote on it. So when I talked to him, he was non-committal on some of these rule changes, but his defense on that is I don't want to start this thing off by trying to tell y'all what rules to put on. So that's going to be up to you guys. So as long as he gets out of our way on that, then hopefully we get that specifically. As far as term limits go, he has told me that he does not intend to do it for a long time. Whatever that means. My convention of state term limit folks over here go, yeah. Yes. Any more questions? Joe?
I appreciate you answering my question. Did you say that he got endorsements from all Republicans before he went to the 31 Democrats that endorsed him? You know about when he got to 75 Republicans?
So this all happened very quick, and the math is a little bit fuzzy. I took my beautiful bride, Christy, on a vacation this last weekend. Right before we left, I believe he was right at under 40 votes. And I thought that it was going to stay that way indefinitely. As soon as we came back and realized the stampede had started, it looks like there were Freedom Caucus members that jumped on and helped start this stampede. So I'm hopeful that they were able to position themselves in a decent manner, and hopefully they get the credit for doing so. We will find that out. Again, it's just a couple hours old, but I'm aware that the Democrats were seeking the support of all the different speaker nominees, including Representative Bonin, but he stood up and told them specifically, I don't want your support until I get to the majority of the Republican caucus. So I believe that they were added on once he got that point, which was yesterday, last evening.
Jonathan?
Yes?
Can you contrast Bonin with the other legitimate speaker candidate, Darby, just so we know like what the two options really boil down to?
Well, the main difference is that Representative Bonin sought to get there with Republicans first, and I'm not so sure that the other way went that way. So from a conservative standpoint, I think we have to fairly say that Representative Bonin is far more conservative than the other option at that point. Guys, we need prayer. Oh, we got one more question.
Okay. I'm just curious, does this guy stand by his word, or is he just tickling your ears for the person?
Well, we're going to find that out, right? But let me tell you this. I felt a need to keep... I felt like I stood up before all of you guys and said December 1st was the process we needed to go with. That's why my name was not on the list of 109 names. And I will tell you, it's been difficult for me because, frankly, I'm the only Freedom Caucus member who's not on that list. But we're fighting through that. After the press conference was done, after the names were announced, the fact that Chairman Bonin decided to even respond to a guy that wasn't even on the late train told me a lot about his intentions and gives me hope for the future. We'll find out. Thank you all. Correct.
Okay, next we are scheduled to hear from Debbie Terry on religious liberties. If you don't know, Debbie is our SRC representative from Senate District 12. However, Debbie is ill tonight, so she has given her notes to Julie, and Julie's going to deliver her message. So welcome, Julie McCarty.
Okay, so there's no way I can deliver Debbie's notes. I mean, she was on the phone with me for a good 20 minutes, and she's just so perfect at what she does, and I just got this. So, but she's also the leader of the Texas Legislative Prayer Caucus. So, I mean, she's like this wonderful, godly woman. She's very sick. So, if y'all would pray for her, that would be awesome. But she wanted me to talk about the Strategic Texas Activist Team, STAT, S-T-A-T, STAT, okay? It's an initiative of the Texas GOP. They did it last session. They're doing it again this session. But you can go online, and I will email this out to everybody on the list. But when we go to convention every 2 years, how many of y'all were delegates? That's fantastic, because while we were there, we voted on our top priorities as a Republican Party. And so now on the Texas GOP website, you can choose, is there what, 5 of them? Yeah, 5 of them. So you can choose 1 of them, 2 of them, 5 of them, whatever, and you just click the box and you will get updates on every time there's a hearing or a bill is offered or something like that on one of our priorities. So it's a great way to track it. I'm sure Fran probably uses that. Yeah, so it's great. So I'll email that out. Also, you may or may not be aware that our state GOP party is discussing whether or not we're going to give a salary to our state chairman. And typically, in the past, we've not done that, but that means you have to be, it's a full-time job and beyond. That means you have to be individually wealthy and not need an income in order to be our party chairman. And so there's a debate going on whether or not we want to fund that position or not. So your SREC representatives want to hear from you. They're not gonna, they're the ones that will make that determination, but they want to hear it from you. So Debbie Terry and David Halverson have SD 12, which if Jane Nelson is your state senator, you would let both of them know. And then we also, probably the bulk of you are either SD 9 or 10. And I'm so sorry your senator is not Connie Burton anymore. But if you used to have Connie Burton, who are your SREC people? Who knows that one?
Warren North.
Okay, Warren and...
Warren's here.
Warren is here, so you could let him know. And who's the other, who's the girl? Susan Wright, okay. And then from 9, who's 9? Steve Atwell and Gebhardt, okay? So those are easy people to find. So let them know so that they can vote on your behalf. And then the only other thing she wanted me to talk to you about is the prayer caucus. They're doing, like, okay, so she talked to me about this dinner they're doing, like I knew what it was, and I didn't want to tell her I didn't know what it was. So it's some kind of Jerusalem National Prayer Breakfast in Texas. It'll be in April, and I think she is actually, it's not for sure yet, but like the top dog in Israel is going to be here. Is that? I was going to say Netanyahu, and I thought, I just don't keep up. So anyway, I think they're planning for him to be here. So that's not a definite, but she wanted y'all to pray to make that happen because she's really excited about it. So you can pray for Debbie Terry. You can pray for the Legislative Prayer Caucus dinner. Okay? Thanks, y'all.
And next, we're going to hear about a subject near and dear to all of our hearts, which is property taxes. And to speak on that is, no, don't boo, it's Ross. Boo property taxes. Yay, Ross. Ross has recently, if you don't know this, been appointed as president of NETTP. He's my go-to buddy on all things involving property tax, so please welcome Ross.
All right, good evening. Who in here cares about property taxes? Yeah. All right. Who actually thinks something's going to get done on property taxes? I know. I knew the answer to that question. I knew the answer to both questions. So my name is Ross. Thanks for having me here. I want to kind of keep this simple because this issue is made unnecessarily complicated to try to convince you that nothing can really be done about it. And that's just complete hogwash. So I want to focus on two things that really need to be addressed on property taxes. I think both can be done this session without a whole lot of strife. With any policy proposal, there's always details. There's always complexity. There's always bill language. That's got to be worked out with anything. So don't let anyone tell you that, well, this issue is just too complicated to pass legislation, okay? It can be if you make it that way. But just like any other issue you've heard about tonight, if there's the political will and desire to do something, lawmakers will make it happen. Now, I think on this issue, you actually have to entice them a little bit to do something on it. And by that, I mean you need to demand that something's done on it immediately. We've virtually gotten no real property tax reform in recent years. Zero. Okay? Does anyone remember when the homestead exemption was increased? What was that, 2 sessions ago? As soon as appraisal values went up, in like 1 year, that got wiped away. Now, the Senate version of that bill, raising the homestead exemption, meaning that more of your property's value would be exempt from property taxes, okay? The Senate had indexed that to inflation. And so I think they may have indexed it to median home value or something, so that as home values went up, the exemption would go up. And then the House gutted that provision of the bill. And what that assured, what that locked in place was that as property values went up, after that was passed, that $1 billion or $2 billion, whatever, of property tax relief through the homestead exemption, as soon as property values went up, that was erased. Now you still get the exemption, but I'm saying the effect of it, the relief, whatever was provided, was temporary and was gone. So all that bragging about property tax relief did virtually nothing. Virtually nothing. Okay? So, what should we do? 2 things. We need to cap the growth of your property taxes. Okay? And there's a couple different ways to do that. but then we need to actually pass measures that will reduce what you pay. So we hear a lot of people talk about property tax reform. We need property tax reform. I want my taxes to go down. And right now what's happening is we're not even slowing the growth. Okay, so liberals, what do liberals want? More government, more taxes, right? What do conservatives want? Smaller government, less taxes. We're not even getting a freeze. Okay? So whether you're, everyone here is pretty conservative, I know, but even if you're a moderate or whatever, okay? Or even if you're a conservative Democrat, they're losing. We're not even slowing the growth of property taxes. We're not even slowing the growth. So anyone who opposes the idea of slowing the growth is just, to me, it's so unreasonable that we can't even slow the growth that I can't. No one in here should tolerate that. Nobody in here should tolerate that. Okay? So, Governor Abbott has proposed capping how much tax revenue can come up to taxing entities. He put out 2.5% a year. Okay, so some sort of cap, any sort of cap. I don't care if it's 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%. Right now there is no cap, effectively. Okay? And so any type of cap, any type of limitation as to how much property tax revenues to taxing entities can go up is a good thing. But again, that won't reduce your tax bill. That'll just slow the growth, and that is a good thing. Should not tolerate that. That is a starting point, right? Who agrees with me? Okay, so that's good, okay? So one of the reasons I just want to explain why your property taxes seem to go up automatically is because, when property values go up, the county appraisal district comes in and reassesses your property. Who is familiar with that? Everyone understands when they get that appraisal notice and it goes up. That does not raise your tax bill. What raises your tax bill is the combination of your property value going up and your tax rates that are charged by the taxing entities, cities, counties, school districts. It's the combination of the value going up and none of those taxing entities lowering the tax rate. So what happens is, property values go up, people think, well, if I don't get that appraisal lowered, my taxes are going to go up. No, it's not how it works. It only happens that way because local officials never lower tax rates. Hardly ever. And even when they do lower tax rates, they don't do it enough to offset your appraisal value going up. So they're always raising your taxes, for the most part. There's very few taxing entities that actually lower the tax rates enough. That's why your tax bills always go up. Because it's easy to just do nothing, blame it on the appraisal district, blame it on state lawmakers for why your taxes are going up. Right? Is that familiar? Blame everybody but the people responsible. The people responsible blame everybody else. Now, so first off, we need things that let you vote on tax increases. That was the proposal last session. Let's let Texans vote on a 5% annual tax increase from cities and counties and whatever. It's about 40% of your tax bill. That did not pass both chambers last session. I repeat, that did not pass both chambers last session. They could not agree on a bill. Okay? So we need that. You should be able to vote on a tax increase. Who agrees with that? But remember, that's the starting point. That's the starting point. That's the starting point. What we need is to address school taxes. And the reason why this is easy to address is, number one, it's the largest portion of your tax bill. And it's also something that lawmakers can impact. Okay, so let's recap. We got to stop taxes from going up. We got to let people vote on tax increases, but we also have to cut your taxes. State lawmakers can, in effect, do this over time. And they can do it with school taxes specifically because public schools are paid for with local property taxes, controlled by local officials, and the state takes their revenues and they pay for about half of education. It's actually slightly less than half now. Okay? And so, what needs to happen if you want your taxes to ever go down, and this is something supported by the Republican Party of Texas, what I'm about to talk about. This is something supported by the Texas Public Policy Foundation. This is something supported by us. It's even supported in rhetoric by school districts. And that is that the state needs to pay more for education from its state revenue sources, sales taxes, not to just spend more, but to lower school property taxes, the local school tax rates. Remember how I said the tax rates never come down? In many cases, school district tax rates have gone up over time. So you have higher appraisal values and higher school tax rates. It's a compounding effect. There are people in Plano, Texas, okay, who have seen their school tax bill go up 70% in 10 years. 70% in 10 years. It's insane. There's people whose tax bills have almost doubled school tax bills. Okay? So what needs to happen is the state needs to essentially increase funding for education to buy down local school tax rates. Now, that's not currently how the system works. Okay? But it's something that lawmakers can implement. And they can either do it with existing state revenue streams, so like if the state can budget that they're going to run a surplus, they can take that surplus money that they're not going to spend and then use it to buy down local tax rates. Or some people have proposed raising the state sales tax, but to dedicate it to buying down school property taxes. So, I think this is #1 issue in Texas. It's something, I've been talking about the 5-6 years I've been in Empower Texans. I go around the groups all across the state, but a lot in North Texas. Everyone cares about this issue. This should be like emergency item of the governor, right? Right out of the gate, property taxes. Let's do something on it. And, but it's not going to happen unless people demand that something be done now. There is no reason to delay. We got nothing last year. We got nothing in the special session. We got virtually nothing with the homestead exemption. And we should not tolerate this from our Republican majority lawmakers. So, thank you for your time.
Okay, you noticed on our legislative priorities, #1 was property tax. I wrote reform, but I'm going to change that to property tax relief. So, we're going to be working on that. Next, we're going to have Miss Terry Hall with Texans United for Reform and Freedom. And her group works on transportation issues. And I'm telling you, this woman has forgotten more about transportation legislation than I will ever know. And I depend on her so much. It's one of the great things about all these groups you've heard from tonight. We as individuals or even as a small group, we can't keep up with every single particular issue subject. So we rely on these groups and these people who do monitor specific issues to help us. So Terry's going to talk to us about transportation legislation. Please welcome Terry Hall.
I'm going to have him help me bring up my slides. I am technologically challenged in a big way. That's why I have 10 kids, right? They do all the devices for me. And my wonderful husband. No, that's okay. So we don't just do transportation, let's face it, we fight toll roads. That's what we do. And I'm a mom, just like Jackie and so many of the other ladies that you've heard from tonight. And this issue hit home for us because they tried to come in near where I live I live north of San Antonio. I would never live in the People's Republic of San Antonio either. But I live north of San Antonio. 281 was my main highway into and out of everything we needed in and out of the city. And they wanted to come in, TxDOT, and take every lane of every highway, existing lane of that highway, and turn it into a toll road. 6 weeks after the public hearing, they said an unsolicited bid came in from a private corporation known as Centra, which has 2 of your highways, and wanted to come and take that over the entire north side, both 1604 and 281 in San Antonio. And we have been on a rampage ever since. And we were one of the groups that worked with a lot of other groups around the state to stop the Trans-Texas Corridor way back in the day. If you remember that. Fighting for your property rights. So let's dig right in to what our priorities are this session. If anyone wants to know what our successes were last session, we have that on our website. We have a whole section of the TexasTurf.org website that talks about our Grassroots Action Center. And I literally list all the good and bad bills from every session for the last 14 years that I've been doing this. This will be my 8th legislative session working on your behalf for free. Doesn't pay much, but that's okay. Our big priority is toll cessation. Do I hear an amen to taxes ending? Right? Just like we want our property taxes not just to go down, we want actual relief. We want elimination of our property tax at some point. Well, this is no more true than you have with the transportation issues. This with toll cessation as well. Now, how many of you know that keeping the toll in place after the road's paid for is actually a violation of the Texas Constitution? Y'all know that? Article 1, Section 26 of the Texas Constitution prohibits perpetuities. Yet what are they getting away with? They are keeping the toll in place forever because unelected bureaucrats have been given the authority to do so by our legislators who are looking the other way. They've given them a blank check years ago, and now the problem's coming home to roost. How many of you here have to take a toll road to get anywhere? How many of you pay in excess of $100 a month? Okay, you're not too bad. That's good. Because most people where I talk to up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area are paying in excess of $200 a month. And that's per driver, folks. That's not per household. That's per car. If you're like me, I have 5 drivers in my household. Okay, if I had to take one of these managed toll lanes that are 70 cents to $1 a mile during peak hours, we would be paying over $9,000 a year in tolls just to get to and from where we need to go. That's how big a problem this tax, runaway tax has become in our state. So one of the things that this eliminates, when you take the toll off the road when it's paid for, which everybody instinctively, at least in the GOP, anyone who calls himself Republican is for this. Lieutenant Governor, when I was talking with him one time about our priorities, he looks up from the paper and goes, "Oh, I'm totally for this." So they're all for this instinctively, right? But then when the rubber meets the road, the devil's in the details, you get 14 toll entities and their lobbyists, the taxpayer-funded lobbying, which y'all are opposed to just like we are. They come in and gut the whole thing because it involves this thing called system financing. What this is Robin Hood for roads. They're allowed to take the toll revenue from one road, let's say it's the Dallas North Tollway, and they get excess revenue off that. They can use that excess toll revenue rather than pay it off and make it a free road. That's what we want. They can use that toll revenue to now obligate it to another 50-year bond. And then they can do it on another project after that. And they keep doing this over and over and over, and they've tied all the toll roads in not just North Texas, but in all of our major metro areas across the state into a toll system. So now when we actually had bills to take tolls off roads, they come back and tell us we can't take the toll off that road until we pay off the bonds for the entire network. You know what that number is?
40 million.
More money than we bring in a whole year in the state of Texas. Okay? It is in the tens of billions to pay this off. So we have to start drawing a line in the sand and say, from here forward, no more. You are no longer allowed to tie these toll roads together as a system because the toll you're paying is no longer paying for the road you're driving on. It's paying for some road somewhere else where you don't even drive on it. So this really has become socialism for roads, and we have got to put a stop to it. In fact, none of the toll systems around the state can survive without system financing. There's not one toll viable project left in the state of Texas. That means that not one toll road they want to do today, any new toll roads from here forward, can pay for themselves. Not one. They already know they're not going to collect enough revenue to even pay for the cost of that project. All the golden goose have been, the eggs have been laid. There are no more. The second thing we want to get done this session is to end this problem with toll, fines, and fees. Do I hear an amen to that one too? This is a huge problem across the state of Texas. We got a little wee bit of incremental progress last session with getting an amendment tacked on to the TxDOT Sunset Bill. And this was in large part thanks to our Freedom Caucus members who just went to bat for us all day long. Every bill we had all session long, we turned into an amendment to that TxDOT Sunset Bill because it had to pass. And we had so much success last session because of that. So big thank you to our Freedom Caucus guys. Yeah. And in this case, a Democrat from San Antonio, where we don't even have any toll roads. I wonder why that is. But we don't have any toll roads in San Antonio. And Representative Ian Menjades is the one who carried this bill that would cap the toll fines and fees at $48 a year. A year! That's not per month, that's not per transaction, that's not every time you go under a toll gantry, that is per year per driver. They cannot exceed $48 a year. But guess what? That only applied to a really small, teeny amount of projects that TxDOT operates, which is not very many. Most, as you know, up here are operated by the North Texas Tollway Authority. And all these other regional mobility authorities, and which are 9 of those around the state, and other toll entities that we can't control, we don't elect. So, we actually, in that same amendment, tried to decriminalize failure to pay a toll bill. Do you know that you are a criminal in this state? They can literally not only impound your car, block your vehicle registration, and in essence, keep you from your ability to make a living because they've impounded your car and taken away your ability to get to work. You can actually be thrown in jail for failure to pay your toll fines and fees that they say you owe, which of course get out of control really fast. So this problem is so big that TxDOT, that only operates 3 projects in the Austin area, has already admitted in a hearing a few weeks back that they've put 2 million Texans in collections over unpaid tolls. 2 million. That is more than the population of the city of Austin, and they only operate 3 roads in Austin. So this should worry all of us about how prolific this problem is. So we want to increase that cap on the toll fines and fees, or not increase it, but to make it apply to every toll entity, not just TxDOT. So therefore, everybody gets relief, not just that little handful that we happened to get passed last session. The third thing is, you remember on the Republican primary ballot, Prop 2, which said that we all, by 90% of us, support not building or putting any tax money into toll roads without our consent. Okay, you remember that? That's being twisted by a lobby group called Texans for Traffic Relief, which, by the way, the same lobbyist that's pushing this has also been hired by the city of Austin to kill property tax relief. So he's not on our side. But at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is say, we want to get a vote on all toll roads because, if you remember, last year we did a coalition letter around this time of year that put a cap and said no more toll roads moving forward. The governor and lieutenant governor put a restriction on that. But now, by trying to twist that Prop 2, and what we were saying with that Prop 2, is they want to open the door up wide and make us have to monitor public votes in all 254 counties every time they want to do a road project. They're going to turn it into a revenue-generating machine and make us have to monitor all these roads and try and kill them. The other thing we know is already going to happen. Think school bond elections, folks. Even if you defeat a school bond, how many more years before they come at you again? And again, and again, until they get what they want. Well, TxDOT's going to do the same thing. They are going to just come back and never fix your road until you agree to toll it. So we're not for that. One thing I just wanted to say real quick, because I've only got a minute left, is that this plays into the left's agenda to put you on a road diet. Toll roads, especially managed lanes inside your existing highways, may seem like, well, you still have a choice, right? You can either take the free lane and sit in unbearable congestion, or you can pay the toll and get going where you need to go. At the end of the day, they have no incentive to ever expand your free lanes again, because all they do is increase the misery on those free lanes till you are forced to pay. On MOPAC in Austin, in less than 10 days of operation on that managed toll lane in the middle of MOPAC, it went up to over $1 a mile in peak hours to take that managed toll lane. How many of us can afford to pay $1 a mile to get everywhere we go? You can't. So this is designed to keep cars out of the lane so buses and bikes and other things can get where they need to go quicker. The governor's promised to put an end to these toll taxes. We need to support the governor on this. And these are our reforms. You have a flyer in front of you. We would love for you to sign up for our text message alert. No Toll Texas. Just put that into the 94253 on your short code on your text on your phone. No Toll Texas, and you will be alerted when these bills are coming up. We need you to flood the phones, folks, or come down to Austin if you can to testify on some of these key bills for us to get it across the finish line. For 7 straight sessions, we have tried to get toll cessation. We have had a hearing once, and it's never gone out of committee. We absolutely need the grassroots support behind this, and we would love your help in doing that. We also have our sign-up sheet going around. If you have any questions, I'll be around afterwards. Thanks so much.
Okay, so there's lots of homework tonight, isn't there? Our final speaker tonight is going to be Tom Glass. He is with a few groups, and I'll let him tell you about that, but one of them is Texas Constitutional Enforcement, and his brochures, I believe, are out front if you want to pick something up on that. It's all about enforcing the Constitution. That's a revolutionary idea, don't you think? But Tom's going to talk to us about protecting the electric grid in Texas, which is also an extremely important topic. So please welcome Tom Glass.
Well, I wanted to once again thank the veterans in the room. This is Veterans Day, 100th anniversary after the end of World War I. Each one of you took an oath to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And in fact, that's what I'd like to do today. I got one topic that talks about protecting us from enemies, foreign, and the other is protecting us from enemies, domestic. So let's start with the foreign threat first. Which is our grid protection. Let me go ahead and get that up with the slideshow.
Go ahead, Ron.
So F5? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, this is the threat to the grid. I'm going to go faster because I think I have 5 minutes per topic, right? I have a total of 10 minutes. Okay, got it. All right. Okay, so I want to find my page down on this one. Okay, good. All right. I'm going to use this slide to kind of give you my elevator pitch about this issue, and then I'm going to go to what I really think you would like to know, which is the nitty-gritty details of the inside baseball politics that's going on relating to protecting the grid. I will show you a picture in a minute about what the grid is. Primarily, it's the transmission lines that we have, the high-voltage transformers, and the generating capability. Why is it something special here in Texas? We have our own independent grid that's not connected to the rest of the United States, at least the majority of Texas. I'll show you a map of that. Why does it need protecting, and what are the threats? Well, of course, we will talk a little bit about in a minute all the things that could go wrong if the power went out and never came back on. If you just start thinking about it, it's a pretty horrifying prospect. What are the threats? I'll talk about those 5 in a minute, but it's primarily a nuclear EMP, it's solar flares, it's cyber threats, it's physical attacks, and then there's also these handheld devices that are called directed energy weapons that can take out, that fry all the electronics in a particular location, in the right location could do devastating things. How do we know about these risks? Well, we know about it because for a number of reasons. With the nuclear EMP, we know it because the military tested high-altitude nuclear weapons up in space back in the 60s. And when they started doing it, started knocking out, when they were doing it in the Pacific, started knocking out electrical systems in Hawaii. The Russians experienced the same thing in Siberia. And so from that, the military started hardening their assets, but nobody ever got around to thinking about what would happen to us in the civilian world if that same thing happened. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about how the technical experts in the military and the intelligence communities and the space science communities are having disagreements with the people, the engineers paid for by the power industry, and that's the cause of what some of the problems we're having. All right, and then how can we protect the grid and what's the cost? I have a picture that talks about different components. The bottom line number on this is Tom Glass's estimates, but I figure for $25 per person in Texas, which is $29 million, multiply that by 25, you can get for a little bit under $500,000. We can do a one-time expenditure. We can make the grid where it can take a licking and keep on ticking. That does not cover the doing what we need to do to the critical infrastructure in our industries and our homes, but that at least gets the supply side under control. And then I'm going to talk about why we haven't protected the grid, which is the inside baseball thing. Let me do real quick the, in fact, where are we on time? I want to make sure where I am.
Got 1 minute left.
Okay, good. Let me just go skip down to the why we haven't got this done. Let me just do that. One of the things that you guys probably know is that the cronies and the people, the special interests, have dominated our Texas elected officials, and of course they dominate the guys in Washington, D.C. as well. we've known about this threat, and our first report happened in 2004 from the EMP Commission. The guys in the military and the intelligence community did a study, well, it was the space science guys, about solar flares and EMP, and they told us starting in 2004, and then again in 2008, and then again in 2017, that the civilian infrastructure was in dire threat that could cause up to 90% of us dying if the nuclear EMP happened, and the other types of threats probably are less drastic than that, but still, it's an incredibly terrible threat, and that's what they told us. Ever since then, whenever somebody tries to do it on the federal level or on the state level, the power industry goes in and says, those guys are blowing smoke to you, they're wrong. And they don't say it out loud, they don't say it in public to you and me. What they do is they go in and whisper it to our elected officials. Okay? For an example, the first time I ever worked on this stuff, I went to see the governor's office. This was 2 sessions ago, and I went to see the person on staff in the governor's office who's over the power stuff. Well, guess what? That person had just come from the power industry. She just sneered at me. I mean, she was very rude to me. She treated me like I was a tinfoil hat guy, and I was saying, look, I'm just paying attention to what the guys in the military who have spent billions of dollars to protect our militaries from. I just think we ought to do the same thing to protect the lives of ordinary Texans. And she just kind of blew me off. But that's the person that's advising the governor on these issues. I was told by a very knowledgeable person in the last legislative session that if a bill passed, if Senator Hall's bill passed, it said we should study both the transmission companies and the generation companies to see what vulnerabilities exist. Just a study bill, mind you, study, right? That if the generation companies were included in it, the governor would veto it. And one of the things when I started doing this politicking stuff, what I realized that I like about doing it is, the realization I've had is if you don't ask for something that you want, you're unlikely to get it. So what I did is I told that politician, I said, I think the people of Texas need to know that their governor cares more about the power generating companies than they do about their lives. And I said, so I urge you to send that bill on to the governor and make him decide. Personally, I don't think he's that stupid. So that's where, okay, that's 3 minutes total that I have left? Oh, wow. Okay. So anyway, the other thing that I wanted to tell you is that we got a bill passed by Senator Hall in the Senate last time. We got a bill passed by Tim Parker in the House. And then we got into the politics of it. The leadership of the House under Strauss and Byron Cook and all those despised the Tea Party and Bob Hall, who came from the Tea Party. And they had it out for him. They were going to do anything they could do to stop him. And I'm here to tell you, for you guys from SD9, Kelly Hancock is a buddy with those guys in the House that despise the Tea Party. His staff was openly hostile, said they were going to do everything they could to torpedo Senator Hall's bill, and they did. We got down to the last, and they had to choose between the House bill, which was more oriented toward the industry, and Senator Hall's bill, which was more citizen-oriented and across the board. And when Kelly Hancock had a choice to do one or the other, he chose neither to take care of the industry. So that's where we are. Senator Hall is going to go after it again. He's making a lot of progress with the military and the Department of Energy on a federal level, and we're going to give it another try this session at the state level. So that's that. All right, now the next I want to do is enemies domestic. Let's see if I can get there fast enough. Texas constitutional enforcement. And again, I guess I get to give my elevator pitch. The main problem that we face in this country is a federal government out of control that does all sorts of things that are not allowed by it. Now, I think the root cause of that, I'm going to hit F5, and I'm going to do a secret little take. I think the root cause of that is, what is the root cause? It is because progressives and cronies deliberately misinterpret and violate it every day because they want power over lives, and because no one is stopping them. The feds will never limit their own power. The framers knew how to do that. They said we're going to pit power against power. The states created the federal government, And we are the masters. We, the people of the state of Texas, and the state of Texas is the master of the feds. It's not the reverse. The Constitution doesn't say that. And so the solution to this is, in a nutshell, it's time for Texas elected officials to honor their oaths to the Constitution, exercise independent judgment about constitutional meaning. It is not the case that the Supreme Court is our supreme ruler. It is not the case that the Supreme Court said, I believe it, that settles it. No. If you've sworn an oath to the Constitution, you've not sworn an oath to blindly follow the Supreme Court. You are supposed to use your independent judgment, look at what the framers intended with that text, look at what they meant, and then start taking action to declare acts of the federal government to be unconstitutional, and then call upon our state law enforcement, once we've formally done so, to actually arrest federal agents who persist in violating Texans' rights. We have a wonderful statute in Texas called the Official Oppression Act. It says if you're a public servant, and by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, the federal agents are our public servants. I know they think they are our bosses, right? But they are our servants. If you're a public servant and you knowingly violate the rights of Texans, it is a Class A misdemeanor in Texas. It's time we started applying that not only to them, to our local law enforcement, to federal agents as well. That is the essence of what the Texas Sovereignty Act does. It creates a process by which two ways of the Texas elected officials can formally declare acts of the federal government to be unconstitutional, then calls upon our law enforcement to use Texas Penal Code, especially the Official Oppression Act, to stop federal agents from violating the Constitution of Texas. One of the things we added in the Sovereignty Act is to give independent prosecutorial authority in these matters to the Attorney General, in addition to the district attorneys. Because I know there's lots of, now more and more Soros elected district attorneys here in Texas, and we need two shots at the apple for doing that. That is the essence of that. How much time do I have left? 0. All right. Well, one other thing. I'll just say one other thing. To find out more about it, you've got the brochures out here for Texas Constitutional Enforcement. The name of the Facebook group and page, and the group is where we do our lively stuff and work on stuff, is Texas Constitutional Enforcement. For you non-Facebook folks, we have a website, we have an email list you can sign up for. It's called TXCE for TexasConstitutionalEnforcement.org. We only do Facebook on the grid stuff. It's called Protect the Texas Grid. I'm Tom Glass. I'm Tom G. Glass on Facebook. We welcome a Facebook friend request, and let's sign up for these groups and let's get working on it this session. Thank you.
Okay, y'all, I know this is why you're here, is to watch these cute little speeches within here. Not trying to be condescending, but I just think they're adorable. So, I mean, if you are not presenting or helping present, if you are a student, if you would come stand by this door, because you guys are going to run the polls, and these people are all going to be jumping up and ready to run out, so you've got to be ready for them. So remember, we have 2 people per, like A through D, would have 2 people. One person will be looking at the ID, and the other person will hand them a ballot. You got it? Okay, yeah. We'll see how smoothly this goes. So, yeah, you're supposed to show ID when you vote. If you'll play along, I know it can be annoying to have to get it out, but if you didn't bring your ID, just use your Northeastern Tea Party name tag, okay? So, follow the rules. Okay, so first we will hear from Brett Jarbo.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Brett Jarbo. I've already come up here once, and I'm going to get through this fast, but we can all leave. Okay, so I'm just going to open with a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. He once said that a people without children would face a hopeless future. However, a country without trees is almost as helpless. Now, it is because I and the Tree Party believe that trees are very important, and I think that I'm supposed to persuade you why you should think that trees are very important as well, and why you should vote for the Tree Party. Now, the main point that we stand for is that deforestation and other environmental harms will be reduced by eliminating homework. Now, if you vote for the Tree Party, you will be eliminating homework as well. I know it might sound like a bad thing, but for us students, it's very good. Now, there's some reasons that I've been talking to some people here, and there's some reasons that I think y'all might want to vote for Lizzie. Now, the first one, I know, I already heard a boo, it's, okay, I'm fine.
We love you.
The first one is that Lizzie stands for more Christian values, and my response is basically that this isn't really valid because I stand for almost the same values and we stand for more. We stand that trees are valuable and deforestation should stop. And the second one that y'all will probably vote on is that y'all have known Lizzie much longer. And if you do vote on this decision, I do not blame you. If I knew someone for 10 plus years, I would definitely vote for them over someone who I've talked to more than 0 times.